Good morning. On behalf of THSTI, RCB, other institutions in the NCR Bioscience Cluster at Faridabad, and the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, we welcome you for the first of the Professor M.K. Bhan Memorial Lecture Series. Professor Maharaj Kishan Bhan was one of the strongest pillars of the research ecosystem and innovation in the country. His love for children and his passion to find effective solutions for their health drove him to lead some seminal research when he was at the Department of Pediatrics at AIIMS for over 3 decades. These interventions got translated into clinical practice and policy and made a significant impact on the management of some critical childhood diseases. He further expanded his contribution to the country's biotechnology ecosystem as the Secretary of Department of Biotechnology for 8 years. He encouraged an interdisciplinary culture, and the new DBT institutes on the clusters at different parts of the country and BIRAC are a true example of this vision. He was someone who believed that intelligent connectivity is the way forward. THSTI and RCB particularly were fortunate and have been fortunate to grow up with this vision. He constantly challenged himself and others around him to create, to think differently. But this was done with a compassion because for him, human values took precedence over everything else. But above all this was his passion to mentor, to excite young minds to think, create, and innovate. And because of that, after he superannuated, he continued to work with young investigators to facilitate sustainable research systems outside the government in the Society for Applied Studies and in academic institutions like IIT Delhi. Sadly, he left us in January this year, much before he should have, but has left behind a legacy of his insights, thoughts, ideas, and a deeply patriotic, India-focused vision. And of course, the large number of people he touched in many different ways. This lecture series being initiated today will be an annual event on his birth anniversary. It's a small attempt to mirror his life, to bring thoughts from bright minds, to inspire others to fulfill their potential and dreams, and to move forward with his vision for a society, a better society through health, science, and policy. With this, I'd like to request Professor Sudhanshu Vrati to take the program forward.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for this event. I thank our distinguished guests for the event, Dr. Vijayaraghavan and Dr. Renu Sarup, and my many thanks to Dr. Vinod Paul, who is the speaker for the day. Shinjini has already given you the genesis of this event. It is our privilege at RCB and THSTI to host this event in memory of Professor Bhan, who was instrumental in setting up these 2 institutions among the several others. Actually, Dr. Bhan was a true institution builder. I will now request the chairperson of our Board of Governors and Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Dr. Renu Sarup, for the presidential address and her message. To mark this event, I will also request her to name the cluster auditorium in memory of Dr. Bhan as the Professor M.K. Bhan Auditorium. Thank you very much once again. It's over to you, Dr. Sarup.
Thank you very much, Sudhanshu and Shinjini, and thank you all for being here today. We all collect here today on the birth anniversary of Dr. M.K. Bhan, a person who we all loved dearly, a person who was a guide, a mentor, a friend to everyone, I think, who is here today. And it is today clearly an occasion where we need to come together to celebrate what Dr. Bhan has done during his lifetime, but also as a small tribute to him, to pledge together that we will carry his legacy forward. We have today, in fact, thank you, Mrs. Bhan, Shireen, Gautam, for being with us on this occasion. We're also in the audience. We have with us Dr. Ramasamy, Dr. Professor Padmanabhan. We can't really see in the virtual meeting, but I know we have a lot. Dr. Manju Sharma would be joining as well. Everybody here, and of course, the hundreds of scientists, researchers. We really cannot name everybody who's with us, the entire DBT family. But for Dr. Bhan, the DBT family was not DBT or its institutes. It was the entire fraternity of scientists, researchers, young students, everybody who was part of this journey of taking biotechnology forward. Sudhanshu, it is indeed a great pleasure, but more than that, a great privilege to have this auditorium named after Dr. Bhan. And it gives me immense pleasure to do that. More so because this auditorium, which is in the NCR cluster, the THSTI, the RCV, which he built with so much of love and affection as the first translational institute. And this auditorium would be the auditorium which has for many years and will continue for many years to discuss the cutting edge science, research, bringing in the experts from across the country, bringing in the knowledge, bringing in the translational experience, and would be the auditorium from where a lot of many more decisions would be taken. So it's with immense pleasure that I take this opportunity to name this auditorium, and we hope that we will be having excellent discussions in this. As Shinjini put it very rightly, Dr. Bhan and even Sudhanshu said, an institution builder. Shinjini said that he's been with us through this whole translational journey. In fact, the whole word translational is what we really began moving forward with Dr. Bhan. Today, with Dr. Vijay Raghavan with us, Dr. Vinod Paul with us here today, we can all collectively say that this translational journey, which DBT got into, with Dr. Bhan initiated, Dr. Vijay Raghavan took forward, we have been able to create a very, very strong and vibrant ecosystem. And Dr. Vinod Paul's talk is going to be about the translational research and the entire system around it. What was something that any of us who've had any association with Dr. Bhan is that his love for the young researchers. He would always speak about building the future leaders of this country. And as has been said, whether it's our institutes that we build, whether it's BIRAC, each time we had a discussion with him, it was something new that came out. And today, if India is on that path, if we can proudly say that we are part of the innovation translational ecosystem, we owe a lot to what Dr. Bhan has contributed. While we miss him dearly, and I think each one of you here would agree with me when I say we do feel his presence with us on every occasion as we move along. And here, today at the time of the pandemic, we miss him much more. But every step that we take, it's the guidance that he would have given us, which is with us as we move on. On this occasion today, it also gives me immense pleasure that the Department of Biotechnology is formally launching the M.K. Bhan Young Researcher Fellowship Program, something which Dr. Bhan was always keen for, that how do we get these young researchers to work with them, to work forward, to work towards the research activity. And with this, I feel very pleased and privileged to announce this before you. This is an annual fellowship program to recognize and encourage our bright researchers to continue their research in the country after their PhD. And here we are looking at making them independent researchers to begin with, since we will have some limited numbers who come in, they will work with the DBT autonomous institutes, and subsequently we will consider opening it and expanding it to others as well. This is a small tribute that we have making to Dr. Bhan, so that these young researchers who come in can then work towards cutting edge research and be the future leaders of our country. We hope that with the M.K. Bhan Young Researcher Fellowship Program, we will build next leadership within our country, a leadership of young researchers who will follow the guidance and the footsteps of what Dr. Bhan has taught us. And with this, the legacy would move on. So once again, thank you very much for being with us here today. This Young Researcher Fellowship Program is announced today. We have the call open for the next about 8 weeks. And we hope that collectively, with this, we'll build a very strong team. And Dr. Bhan's vision of having a young, a vibrant, and energetic India being in the forefront would be fulfilled. So thank you very much for being with us. And we all collectively pay our tribute to Dr. Bhan. Thank you. Over to you, Sudhanshu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Renu, for your message, and also naming the auditorium as M.K. Bhan Auditorium. You know, this auditorium is linking RCB and THSTI. It's right in the middle of the two institutions, linking them together. And Dr. Bhan, being the glue all the time within the institutions, it's only appropriate that this auditorium is named after him. So thank you very much. Now, it is my privilege to introduce the speaker for the day, Dr. Vinod Paul, who is a member of the Niti Aayog. Professor Paul has been a professor and head of pediatrics at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and has contributed immensely to issues related to neonatal health. Dr. Paul had been very closely associated with Professor Bhan, and it is only appropriate that he is the first speaker for the Dr. M.K. Bhan Memorial Lecture Series. Thank you, Professor Paul, for accepting our request to speak. The title of Dr. Paul's talk today is Science and Art of Influencing Health at Transnational Scale, How Visionary Physician Scientists Do It. I look forward to hearing you, Professor Paul.
Sudhanshu, if I may just interrupt, Dr. Paul, before you come in, I think it's the right and appropriate time to request Dr. Vijay Raghavan for a few remarks before you speak, so that it'll set the tone for the talk. So Dr. Vijay Raghavan, can I request you please for your remarks here before Dr. Paul makes his memorial lecture talk?
Thank you very much, Dr. Renu Swarup, Dr. Paul, Sudhanshu Vrati, Dr. Shinjini Bhatnagar. It's a great honor to be asked to do this today. As we've heard from Dr. Renu Swarup and Dr. Shinjini Bhatnagar and Dr. Sudhanshu Vrati, Dr. Bhan was not only instrumental in creating this wonderful Delhi cluster of institutions, but also had an enormous impact on our national scene when he was Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, before and after. I'll be very, very brief and point out to one aspect of Dr. Bhan, which has made an enormous impact on all of us. And that is being both friendly and deeply critical at the same time. He had the ability to set the bar very high and make demands on people who associated with him so that they constantly were critical about themselves and went on to do better and better things. He was ruthless in his criticism, but he was also extraordinary in his ability to take you along as a friend and a colleague despite this criticism. It is this ability to take people along while at the same time being critical, which has lasted in our environment, in our science environment, and that's absolutely essential at all times, and particularly at this time. Collegial working together, and at the same time putting our scientific views across without any difficulty or any fear is something which he inculcated. And he had an ability to do this where at the end of every discussion, you were, came out inspired and challenged and wanted to do wonderful things and never hurt. This rare ability is something which many of us have learned from him, and we must continue as we go ahead. Thank you very, very much, and I look forward very much to hearing Dr. Paul and the discussions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijayaraghavan. May I now request Professor Paul to give his talk. So over to you, Professor Paul.
Thank you. I think I first load the slide and then start so that there is no interruption. Just one moment. Shinjini, can you see the slide? They are loaded now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and very warm greetings from Niti Aayog. Respected Dr. Vijayaraghavan, Dr. Renu Swarup, Dr. Sudhanshu Purati, Mrs. Girija Bhan and family, Dr. Shinjini Bhatnagar, distinguished DBT family, you've given me a very unique honor, which I will cherish throughout my life. This is very, very special, and I'm overwhelmed by your gesture, and it's a very special moment for me. So thank you so much, the Biosciences Cluster faculty and colleagues and staff, for giving me this honor. It is Sir's birth anniversary today. Although I have, and many of us have been remembering him each day, today obviously it is very special, truly special, because all the memories of 4 decades of my association with Dr. Bhan are coming back to me these few hours since morning in particular. For me, he was a brother and a friend, a guru and a mentor, and philosopher and a guide. And let me just sum up by saying that I valued, cherished, and embraced his words, his wisdom, and his counsel like Arjuna followed Lord Krishna. And why not? Because he was so right, so visionary, so well-meaning, so decent, and so affectionate. It has been a loss. We miss him every day. We miss him in particular in this point in history when we are facing a pandemic, and Dr. Renu, Dr. Vijayaraghavan, you know how often we recall him in our discussions from time to time. Dr. Bhan is watching us. और जैसे इस पिक्चर में लग रहे हैं, ऐसे कह रहे हैं कि आज तुम लोग बड़े मूड में हो. मुझे ही नहीं कह रहे, हम सबको कह रहे हैं. जैसे वो उनका एक स्टाइल था, तुम लोग बड़े मूड में हो. पर सर आज आपको थोड़ा बहुत सुनना पड़ेगा. कुछ सुना चुके हैं, कुछ मैं सुनाऊंगा. Thank you so much, sir. We miss you, sir. Why did I choose this topic? Shinjini talked to me only a few days ago, brought Sudhanshu's message. I couldn't have said, no any day, because it's so special, as I said. But then I was wondering what to say. We didn't have much time to prepare and think, but so I thought, let me, after considering a few options, I thought, let me speak about what was something very special to him, very, very special to him. And it was part and parcel of his discussions, deep discussions, repeated discussions. How can physician scientists contribute to health on scale? He, of course, epitomized this. But this was a recurring theme. कैसे बड़े स्केल पे आप लोग कुछ कर सकते हो? कैसे? One part is that he sent the benchmarks that were very high. सिर्फ इंडिया के लिए ही नहीं, दुनिया के लिए. So that's why the word transnational. And hidden within this is the mischief, that it is also about translational, because it is about translating science, clinical experience into interventions that work on scale in homes, in communities, in Africa, in India. So it's both translational and transnational, and that is the mischief Shinjini and I conspired. So we'll talk about what is the science part and what element is the art, because it is the combination of both which I believe has worked in the examples that I would share. I look upon the next few minutes to share with you 4 stories, 4 live examples, 4 Indian examples where a tremendous change in specific sectors, specific thematic areas has been made by scientists. And all of them were doctors. All of them made a difference on scale that it influenced society beyond our borders. They followed the best rigors of science. They thought about going out of their boundaries of the departments and institutions and disciplines. So that's my humble tribute to Dr. Bhan, because I think he epitomized this. He persuaded us to take a path ingrained in these stories. That's what I present as my bouquet to his memories. These are my 4 heroes, 4 physician scientists who influenced health at transnational scale. I will talk about my teacher, Dr. V. Ramal, and would refer to his stellar work on endemic goiter and the use of salt iodization in controlling the problem of goiter. I will, of course, talk about Dr. Bhan's work, but I will not speak about rotavirus today. I'll speak about some other important contributions that he made in the same space. I love to talk about Dr. Srinath Reddy's work, my very dear friend, my mentor, person whom I admire, for the work he did in the cardiovascular disease NCD space. Pioneering work, game-changing work. And I would also like to speak about the work of Dr. Abhay Bang, another very dear friend, and a co-traveler in our journey for newborn health and for his work. I have had an opportunity to watch these 4 developments in some way. I've also been associated with part of the work in a somewhat deeper way at times. So it is very live. It is something which I felt, which is something to which I can relate, and therefore I can authenticate the story. Well, let me begin by starting with the contribution of Professor V. Ramal, a person of great intellect. When I joined as a medical student at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, he was director. We were so impressed by his personality, his work. He was a celebrity. He was very, very special. He was inspiring, a towering personality, and yet so approachable to students. We were awed by his achievements already. I had an opportunity to fight with him as a students' union leader and to be also mentored by him in many ways. Dr. Ramal is a great hero of our times. And he had the breadth of knowledge from cell biology to epidemiology to health systems, and amazed us. I bring to you the story of the Kangra Valley study. I like us to remember this stellar work that was done in Himachal Pradesh, the then Punjab, in Kangra Valley, a beautiful valley where I did my schooling. And this is a story of prevention of goiter by using iodized salt. I'll begin with that. The work started way back in 1957. Dr. Ramal, having done his internal medicine from India and pathology from Oxford, had just, and via National Institute of Nutrition Center at Kunur, had joined as professor of pathology just a year back in 1956. They start early, it seems. The great physician scientists really start early, as I would illustrate. And he jumped on to this study because he had interest in goiter and its relationship with iodine deficiency. And the story of Kangra Valley study started in 1957. Goiter belt of India covers a huge swath of land, 2,400 kilometers. It's all along the Himalayan ranges from east to the west, from west to the east. It was already known by this time, late 50s, early 60s, that iodine deficiency has something to do with goiter. The pathology, the biochemistry, the biophysiology, pathophysiology was already emerging. But the intervention was eluding. And it was thought, if physiological dose can be added to salt, can that change the game? That was the question. That was the point. Developing an intervention that can go to scale. Here is a picture from one of his own publications. A sad story, a sad happening. A girl with goiter and with mental deficiency. And this is a woman with a large goiter from an endemic area. And I may also remind that along this belt, not only humans had goiter, but also animals developed goiter. I have seen these animals, sheep and goat with large goiters. And I have, of course, seen in my childhood people like this in Kangra belt. Well, what did he do? This is Kangra, Palampur, which is a little bit northwest. He picked up 3 areas. This is called Zone 1, about 33,000 population, about 40 villages, 35 to 40 villages. Zone B, about 20 villages, but population is the same, about 35,000. And this is the third zone, another almost equivalent zone, the third area, these 3 areas. Here, working with the government of Punjab, a decision was taken that in these zones, the salt that would be supplied would be as follows. For this, by rule, by a diktat, this zone received iodide salt. This zone, iodide salt. Okay, this one received iodate salt in physiological doses. And this zone remained control, receiving plain salt. He worked and his team worked with ICMR and his team worked with the district health system led by one Dr. Such of Kangra Health Department. 3 zones, 2 salts, because there was a question whether this is more useful or iodate is more effective. So that's how it was started. The experiment started in 1957. And the elements of this were a special iodized salt plant was set up in Rajasthan. Supplies were controlled, as I showed. And one survey baseline was done in 1956. And the end line for phase 1 study was done in 1962. And also, another characteristic of physician scientists is that they'll back it up with biology. Iodine content of salt was measured. Iodine uptake of school children, representative school children, was measured. The science was not lost, even in those days, early 60s. What was the result of phase 1? Please pay attention. These are school children. The survey focused on school children and general population, about 7,000 representative individuals each. This is zone A. Remember, this is iodide, and this is iodate, and this is control. So the goiter prevalence came down for close to about 40 at the baseline to about 20, and in iodate to close to 15. And in general population, from 40 to under 20 in both these areas, and this zone remained unaffected. Simple design, simple outcome, but a game-changing outcome. And this study was published in Bulletin World Health Organization in the year 1965. This excited people. This changed how we control goiter disease in the country. They carried on with phase 2, and this time, this hapless zone, which was controlled, was also given iodized salt in the form of the same iodate that was referred to earlier. Because after 62, zone B also became the intervention area. What were the results in 1968 survey? That not only the first 2 zones, the intervention zones, continued to have lower and lower prevalence of goiter, but the B zone also showed a decline. And obviously, it didn't have a high start, missed that much advantage. But here also it was demonstrated that giving physiological dose of iodine through salt iodization changes the goiter incidence, and it changed it forever. Because the publications came out, this is 73 publication encompassing phase 2, this is phase 1 work, and of course, whole lot of stellar work is well published in the literature. This led to start of the National Goiter Control Program right in 1962, even before the results were published. And today, I'm proud to say that the last survey done last year, completed last year, shows that more than 80% households of India have iodized salt usage. Direct result of this study, which changed not only the public health in India, but also globally, because this became the norm. And today, the norm for averting endemic goiter is salt iodization. That's the contribution of a physician scientist in a few years of his work. That's a story which I would like to submit to you. This is a team much later, 70s, courtesy my another friend, Dr. Chandrakant Pandav, because the team continued to visit the area. This is Dr. Ramal Gaswami. This is Dr. Such. Regard for the collaborators. This is Dr. Kochupille, Karmarkar, and Pandav. Just to say that his association with that area and the work continued. I'm very pleased to share this picture with you. Now, here is a twist. This is the zone B, which before 1962 was a control zone, but after 62 was the intervention zone as well. I have a connection with this. If you are able to read, there's a place called Nagrota here. Now, this is the place where I did my schooling for 3 years, class 4, 5, and 6. And this is where we went in 2014. Believe me, this is a tree under which I did class 4, open school, no building. That is how simple this place was. And Dr. Bhan and I went there in 2014. At that time, we were part of the Himachal Health Commission, and we were traveling Himachal and working so closely. It was great pleasure interacting with him for many, many hours a day. So the twist is the following, that actually, when I was here, I was a subject of this study. So that's my connection with Dr. Ramalinga Swami's work. I was subject, but then it was in the intervention arm, and had the privilege of consuming the iodate salt. But these are my memories coming back, and circle completed. Professor Bhan and I then lived through, and we discussed this study when we were visiting Nagrota in 2014. I bring to you now the second story, and that comes from my other hero, Dr. Srinath Reddy. Dr. Srinath Reddy is an eminent cardiologist. He chose to become a public health exponent. What a shift. I am seeing that the physician scientists who make a difference take a different path. They don't tread the same path. That seems to be one strand, as you will hear these stories. Cardiologist, public health exponent. Dr. Reddy tells me that when he became faculty at AIIMS, he noted, with the streak of public health elements in his persona, that rheumatic heart disease was given a priority as a public health issue, but coronary artery disease and cardiovascular disease was not given that priorities, even in late 80s. And he set out to uncover the epidemiology of cardiovascular disease because it was not known. It was supposed to be the disease of the rich, disease to be treated in large hospitals with sophisticated people with their stethoscopes and around their necks. So he pioneered a spate of studies which led to a huge change in understanding of the NCDs and coronary artery disease and hypertension. And we see how he and other such people from other countries have taken us to a situation where NCD control is now part and parcel of global health endeavors. This is his path-breaking study published in 1993. We didn't know epidemiology at that time. This is a famous study called Delhi Vellore study or AIIMS Vellore study or AIIMS CMC study, which demonstrated that the risk factors of coronary artery disease, CVD, are hugely prevalent in rural areas as well as in urban areas, more so in urban areas. And he prophesied, he notes in this paper that India, remember, this is 1993, India is undergoing an epidemiological transition and is on the threshold of an epidemic of cardiovascular disease. How true, how timely, except that I think we responded somewhat late because we were obsessed with, and rightly so to some extent, with child mortality, undernutrition, and communicable diseases. But then the scientist in him did convey to us and warned us that it is coming upon us. I picked up another study where, understanding the epidemiology further, he demonstrated that people who are less educated and poor actually have a greater predilection for CVD because the risk factors are more prevalent in them, namely tobacco use, for example, is more prevalent. So he changed the paradigm of the understanding of CVD, letting us know that it is a disease of the poor in particular as it unfolds further. The study indicates that growing vulnerability of lower socioeconomic groups to CSD. Preventive strategies to reduce major CSD risk factors should focus on effectively addressing these social disparities, brought the social dimension, and change the way CVD was looked upon, coronary artery disease and hypertension was looked upon through this path-breaking work. He carried out several other studies. In one study, he demonstrated that migrant workers in urban areas have higher risk factors, higher prevalence of risk factors of CVD than their brethren who stayed back at home in UP and Bihar and Orissa. So it is the environment that changes the predilection for CVD, he showed. But he also showed that Indians by genetics have a higher risk of CVD because he demonstrated that Indians living in Britain, for example, have a higher risk compared to the local population. So genetics combined with environment play havoc and are continuing to play havoc. He also conducted studies on salt metabolism, in particular, the intersalt studies that they are known. And I was one of the volunteers for one of his intersalt studies as a subject whose metabolism was studied. So another, not only an association as a colleague, but also as a subject. So I'm subject of the second pioneer's study as well. His work on tobacco control is well recognized, and that completes the, in a way, completes the wider dimension that I'm referring to as his contribution as a physician scientist. In this very interesting study, tobacco use in Bollywood movies, etc. Watching tobacco use in Bollywood movies and receptivity to tobacco promotional activities were both independently associated with ever tobacco use among adolescents in India. He demonstrated that there is an overwhelming predilection for consuming tobacco by children in school, and very upset. He, of course, got recognition for his tobacco work, as he should. So another work which laid a foundation for transnational, translational work to address this huge problem, this huge epidemic of NCD. And that's how it is now moving forward. People like him, studies like the ones that I shared with you, have led to non-communicable diseases being a target within the Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which is about good health and well-being. And in a way, in terms of policy, it is now in safe framework. But behind this is a lot of hard work of people like Dr. Srinath Reddy. We are so proud to present this case study to you as a learning for all of us. I move now to the third story and the third hero, Dr. Abe Bang and Rani Bang. They live in a place called Gadchiroli, and they have established an institution called Search, which is right in the heart of a jungle in difficult terrain with left-wing extremist activity in that area. This is where it is located in the most eastern part of Maharashtra. The studies that he started were initiated in these 37 villages out here. They were then taken to other areas of Maharashtra. Then other people, I was part of conducting follow-up studies as a team, conducted in many other places in the country, and then of course also in other countries, other places in the country and outside. This paper is among the classics of, as presented by the Lancet editorials editors, that among the Lancet classics, this paper by Dr. Abe Bang and team is a classic. Effect of home-based newborn care and management of sepsis on neonatal mortality. This is a study published in 1999. Work started around 93, 94. And I said that I had a gentle association with this work, providing the neonatal health of the sophisticated kind for the intervention package that was designed. And the intervention package consisted of, apart from antenatal care, neonatal resuscitation by a worker, by a community level worker, care of the low birth weight babies, detection of newborn sepsis, as well as treatment using gentamicin. And the team comprised of a traditional birth attendant, the family, and this worker, which eventually we believe is the ASHA worker for us. And this had a very audacious design. One intervention in the study, which comprised giving gentamicin injections to newborn babies with sepsis by these lay workers who were class 8 pass workers. This study demonstrated that using home care of newborn babies with the package that I demonstrated, you can bring down neonatal mortality by whopping 63% in intervention area of 37 villages that I said. This changed the thinking about how newborn care has to be taken to scale. Prior to this, the typical understanding of tackling newborn health was taking babies to newborn care units, looking after them in incubators with sophisticated super specialists like neonatologists. This changed the game, and it is now part and parcel of the global intervention approach to neonatal survival. These are the publications. This is in addition to the one that I showed. Dr. Bang, of course, published several other articles and papers, and one special journal series was devoted, the Journal of Perinatology, Journal of Perinatology. And this is the work done on the same model in carried out a study at 5 sites to which I was referring to you, of which I was a part, which demonstrated that even when the home deliveries are replaced by institutional deliveries, this approach reduces neonatal mortality by 25% and infant mortality by 33%. This remains relevant today, and this is part and parcel of our home-based newborn care, which is a national program and which is a vibrant, up and running program of the country. It became a norm, the global norm. This is World Health Organization statement on home visits for the newborn child, a strategy to improve survival. And these are the guidelines on home-based newborn care of Government of India. First started in 11 and then updated in 2014, and they are in operation and they are working. They are part and parcel of how India is tackling neonatal survival, and indeed many other countries in Africa, in our neighborhood, are tackling their newborn mortality. That's his contribution. I now come to Dr. Bhan's work with the team. Some of them are here today. Instead of taking rotavirus vaccine story, I'm taking forward the story about how to reduce diarrheal mortality, duration of diarrhea, morbidity due to diarrhea. I remember this paper, which came up in 1992, published in IJMR, which brought together a new truth about diarrheal disease. I remember when he saw these results, he came running to my room, and Dr. Arora and I were sitting. I said, "Isko dekho. आप लोग कहते हो कि डिहाइड्रेशन से डायरिया की डेथ होती है, ऐसा नहीं है. ये तो कुछ और ही स्टोरी है." So what you see in this simple analysis done by Neeta Bhandari and colleagues is one of his earliest community-based studies, which demonstrates that there are 3 ways in which child could succumb to diarrheal death. Acute diarrhea within 14 days of the episode of diarrhea, or diarrhea associated with blood and mucus, which is invasive diarrhea or a dysentery, and then there's a diarrhea which goes beyond 2 weeks. Now, children have a predilection to die due to persistent diarrhea 20 times more often than acute diarrhea, okay? And 7-8 times more often than the dysentery diarrhea. This was the major reason. It emerged in true situation on the ground. And this brought forth the notion of how to avert persistent diarrhea and how to tackle persistent diarrhea. This is how we would see children in the ward, children who would look pathetic, have lost a lot of weight, and have purging, huge purging on the verge of death. Very often we would lose them. At that time, total parental nutrition was hardly a modality. We tried that. Nothing would work. Nothing would work. Because later it emerged that it is a combination of factors. It's about immunity, it's about infection, it's about nutrient deficiency, it is about malabsorption, and it is about bacterial overgrowth. This started to unfold as Dr. Bhan delved deep into the possible mechanisms of this disease. And then, as he would do, he started a number of studies in this regard. A small bowel overgrowth. This is about absorption, malabsorption. And he found that children with persistent diarrhea in neighborhood of Delhi had very unique kinds of E. coli. They had a characteristic of becoming like chains, one after the other, chains comprising of 30, 40 organisms. And this enteroaggregative E. coli was described by him, which was associated with a higher risk of persistent diarrhea. He tried, and Dr. Shinjini was associated with this work, oral gentamicin. Should that work? It did not. A lot of the studies that he conducted actually negated the popular hypothesis. It did not work. Tried various diets till a multi-center study, multinational study was conducted by him and in 3 to 4 groups, his group and 3 to 4 other groups in the world. which demonstrated how persistent diarrhea has to be tackled through an algorithmic approach which comprises dietary intervention, strategic antibiotic intervention, and so on. And this changed the game. Today, persistent diarrhea is not a big deal anymore. There is also a role of zinc that I'll refer to, but the fact remains that this something which looked absolutely difficult and devastating, this problem had a relatively simple solution working through an algorithm. And this algorithm became part of global treatment protocols as well as the national protocols, which demonstrated that antibiotics have no role except if there is systemic infection, no local role, and then there is a stepwise way of tackling the cases of persistent diarrhea. This was a game changer. Had understanding of biology, understanding of how the disease emanated in the community, and how simple manipulation based on the pathophysiology can change the outcome. And it was noted that persistent diarrhea was responsible for 40% of under 5 diarrheal deaths, has now come down to 1/10 of that contribution. This is a second story. It's about low osmolality ORS. Dr. Bhan conducted a number of studies on better oral rehydration solution formulations from the original one. It included using moong dal, I remember, and it also had use of yogurt and so on. But then finally, pathophysiology and laboratory work led to him and other colleagues to a conclusion that a relatively low osmolarity oral rehydration solution would be better than the current 90 millicolent solution that was in vogue at that time. And these studies were done multiple countries, but led by Dr. Bhan and his group, and it is a norm. Today, low osmolarity is the ORS, and this is a norm in the world and norm in the country. Then the third element of this is the role of zinc in children with diarrhea. Dr. Sachdev had shown that zinc was less in cells in children having diarrhea. It led to the hypothesis that introduction of zinc can improve healing and could reduce diarrhea-related morbidity. A number of studies were done. This is added zinc along with ORS, whether together it makes more difference or one is better than the other. Similarly, whether zinc added in oral rehydration solution reduces stool output and or duration of diarrhea. This was proven, yes, it does, and so on. And ultimately, use of zinc is today a norm in the treatment of diarrhea, whether that diarrhea is being treated by me or being treated by an ASHA worker or a health worker in Africa. Today, the norm is that a child with diarrhea should receive oral rehydration solution, low osmolality, as well as zinc in the formulation, in the doses that were tested by Dr. Bhan and other teams under his leadership. 3 examples which made a difference to diarrhea-related mortality, and no wonder we are now talking about 0 diarrhea deaths in our own country. We are talking about 0 diarrhea deaths in the world because it is possible. We have these tools to address this, and when you add these to rotavirus vaccine, which is the fourth intervention on the menu, again fashioned by him, you can see how much contribution Dr. Bhan's team has done. And working as a physician scientist, transnational work and translational work is this example that I am pleased to present to you. So these are the 4 physician scientists whose work I shared with you this morning in memory of Dr. Bhan. These contributions are global, and these contributions make India proud. Let me in the end say what is the science and the art behind it. How do I synthesize what I see as the elements of the the success of this story and the underpinnings of this contribution. So 7 habits, 4 by way of science and 3 by way of art. 7 habits of visionary physician scientists who make a difference. Science, first, they addressed big unresolved problems of public health importance. They addressed problems which affected millions. They affected millions, and they had the audacity to do so. So that's the first part. Second, they did not accept, they did not believe, and they questioned what was already accepted as wisdom and knowledge. They had the humility to ask questions and say, could this be something else? And they challenged the current wisdom, did not accept the current wisdom. And they set out to set the wisdom right. And the third is fundamental, that you can think big, you can challenge the wisdom, but then what do you do if you don't do systematic, high quality studies that are accepted by people as advancement of science and understanding? Conducting studies systematically, high quality, often in the community, often with other groups, is not easy. It needs funding. It needs certain qualities as a scientist. Without 3, 1 and 2 are only dreams, but they worked hard to conduct these great studies. And the fourth element I recognize is that they combined dimensions of health, dimensions of pathophysiology, delivery, all across. If I look at the continuum of biology, epidemiology, clinical sciences, community health, and health system, they clearly, each one of them picked up at least 3 of these in different combinations. So the story of persistent diarrhea is biology, epi, clinical, community, and ultimately health system, the entire spectrum. If I pick up Dr. Reddy's work, epidemiology, clinical, community, and then health systems, and so on. Dr. Bhan, Dr. Abhay Bang's work, clinical, community, health system, and of course, understanding of epidemiology. They looked at the problem in multi-dimensional milieu. They therefore also worked with people with different capabilities and capacities. These are the 4 habits I believe these visionary physician scientists have and had. They were also art components. There were also art components in their habits. First, they decided to do something different and took risk. This is important. We need not do these things, but if you do, you are taking some risk because there is an opportunity cost apart from hard work, apart from the unknown that you may be concerned with. And this is something that comes from the heart. You want to do it or you don't want to do it. It's not about science. Second, they persisted. You can be a great scientist and you can give up. You can then move to another area and third area and fourth area. Keep having your CV filling up with publications. You don't have to persist. You can get your recognitions in a different way. They did not. They persisted. Dr. Ramal Gaswami started in 56. And then you saw the picture of late 70s with Dr. Pandav that I showed you. That is part and parcel of your persona when you pick up a big cause. And the seventh habit is most critical, perhaps. They had the humility, they had the ability to work with teams, develop networks, develop colleagues, work with colleagues across the world, and not give up. You cannot be a solo player for this kind of a endeavor. These are the 7 habits. Let me go back again and enumerate. Address big unresolved problems, and there are horde of them. Don't accept what is already the known wisdom. The known is perhaps not the fully known. Conduct hardcore, high quality studies. And solutions happen, as Dr. Bhan would say, when sciences intersect. And therefore, look at the problem in multiple dimensions because the solutions are not unidimensional. And in terms of art, be ready to do something different. take risk and start early. I should have added that. Start early, start in your 30s. So if young people are listening to this, please, these stories, and you can confirm them through your own discovery. They all started early and they persisted. If you don't start early, you don't have time to complete it all the way. It takes years and years. They did not give up. When the Moong Dal ORS failed, so what? Move on to something else. You don't give up. And then you work at teams and you create networks, you create institutions, and that delivers the health on scale. This is from Shinjini, so I have to acknowledge that. And I agree with this. If Dr. Bhan was to summarize this, okay, if we were to summarize what Dr. Bhan would say things to us, he would have perhaps said this, and this is a synthesis of what we believe, would be his own words. Take up high risk, high impact areas to work on. Move out of your comfort zone. I agree with you, Shinjini. You put these three bullets together, I have added fourth. But I agree with you. I am his mentee. Move out of your comfort zone, accept big challenges. Don't be too cozy, work hard. There's nothing like Saturday and Sunday. Work hard every day. Third, believe that we cannot tread the path alone, need to build bridges with different disciplines and people. And fourthly, keep going, do not give up. Success will come. This is the way he had inspired so many of us. These are some of his one-liners, which we have cherished and try to put them in words today. And I think that sums up what I very humbly try to communicate through these wonderful four stories of great work done by people whom we know, who have living examples. Thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you indeed. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paul. It was indeed very, very nice to go through the visions of four physician scientists who we've known all our lives. I know we've reached 1 hour that we had said we would finish in, but we have a couple of questions. If it's okay with you, could we just bring them up here? Dr. Paul, maybe just have a couple of questions from the audience.
I think we have lost the connectivity.
We'll just give it another second. So while we wait for Dr. Paul, if we can get him back in a minute, there are a couple of comments in the message box, and one has come from Dr. Paul.
I can hear you and see you. Thank you. So thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Paul, we'll just take 5 minutes more to, there's some questions and some comments. The first comment has come from Professor Gagandeep Kang, where she has stated something and then asked a question. She said that amongst all the four luminaries about whom you've spoken, she knew only Dr. Bhan very well. And quoting her, and I know that his knowledge, insight, and wisdom have never been missed more than in the past 9 months. We have been lost without his guidance and counsel for science and for policy. No adjectives about his attributes: visionary, warm, incisive, thoughtful, gentle, skilled, patriotic, affectionate, strategic, ferociously intelligent, occasionally obsessive, are enough to describe the man or the mentor. I miss him, we all do. Her question is, What can we do to create the next generation of strategic thinkers on whom the government and society can rely for direction? This also reflects a couple of other comments and questions that have come in the chat box. So, sir, would you like to respond to that?
Well, this is a very, it's a big, the question is simple, but the answer is not easy, because we'll have to really talk about many facets. Today's opportunity is, time sensitive, but certainly investing in young people, in giving them opportunities to work in interdisciplinary way, showing them the list and the plethora of unsolved problems, giving them the tools, laboratory tools, research methodological tools, financial resources. I think there's a Dr. Kang, you know that this is a big issue. It has multiple facets to this. Someday we must sit down and talk about it, and kindly use the opportunity that you have through me at the NITI to see how we can sit down and create an ecosystem of that nature. I am with you on that, but I'll not be more specific today. Thank you.
One quick question, sir, is what is Niti Aayog thinking about promoting research and promoting young researchers?
Well, Niti Aayog has prepared a couple of policy briefs, which are aimed, and we're working with Dr. Vijay Raghavan and my esteemed colleague, Dr. Saraswat, member SNT, three of us, and looking at pathways above all of creating institutional base, capacity base, and also resource base. We are making a case very strongly to our leadership that investment in science and technology should increase, but then it should also increase in life sciences, and it also increase in sciences which are not getting as much budget as some of the other ones, a few other ones get. Certainly, it is on our agenda, and as I said, we have put the full might of the NITI system, the two of us, as well as Dr. Vijay Raghavan, and we want to take it forward with full throttle in time to come. We want SNT to be a very important part of government's priority more than ever, and I think this pandemic has made it very clear how important the science solutions are for our life, but also for livelihoods and development. Thank you.
And the last question, which has come from Professor Y.K. Gupta, did you ever see Dr. Bhan in an angry mood?
The short answer is no. The more refined answer is that his anger would manifest not as anger, but as a bit of a silence, and you know that this is not something that he has liked. But anger, no. I think we have to learn anger management from a person like Dr. Bhan. That was a very strong characteristic of his personality. No, he would never be angry. No. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, we close the session. Thank you for joining us and for actually agreeing at such short notice. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Vijay Raghavan. Thank you, Dr. Swaroop, and all the other members who have joined this event. Thank you very much.